You can't sleep here. The young agent didn't ask. He ordered. Franklin Wade didn't argue. He was awake, just remembering. The duffel bag at his feet held cassette tapes, letters, and a rusted military radio. Open it. The kid yanked the zipper. A tape spilled out, snapped under his boot. Someone nearby chuckled. Probably thinks it still matters. Franklin said nothing. He just picked up the broken cassette, slid it back inside, and pulled out a wire antenna. 3 clicks, 1 breath. This is Wade, April 14th, Alpha 9, still here. No one noticed, but someone heard. Franklin Wade arrived at the station before the sun had finished rising. It was April 14th. It was always April 14th. New Chapel Hill Terminal still smelled of wet stone and old grease. The same chipped tiles. The same wooden bench near the freight office. A place most people passed by without noticing. But he remembered. He moved slowly, the kind of slow that comes from joints taught patience. The green duffel bag rested heavy on his shoulder, the strap cutting into his faded jacket. His breath was steady, his eyes clear, but there was weight in how he sat down, like it mattered exactly where he placed himself. 5 feet to his left, a new poster about platform safety. Above him, the intercom buzzed faintly with a weather report. Beyond the tracks, the horizon broke open in gold, and beside him, the duffel. Inside were the same contents as every year. 7 cassette tapes, 3 letters, 1 battered field radio, olive, scratched, scarred, and a folded piece of paper with names no one had read in decades. Franklin didn't need a clock. He listened to time. At 7:32 a.m., the new agent appeared. Kyle Ashby, 22 years old, neatly tucked shirt, fresh badge, and the uneasy confidence of someone who believed uniforms came with wisdom. He noticed Franklin as a disturbance, not a presence, not a man. "Hey, sir." Kyle's voice was polite enough, but not soft. "You can't be here." Franklin looked up, nodded once. "I'm not here long." Kyle frowned. "This isn't a waiting area for the public. Do you have a ticket?" "No." "Then I need you to leave." Franklin stayed seated. He wasn't stubborn. He was planted. Kyle stepped closer, now noticing the bag. "What's in there?" he asked. Franklin's hand rested on the zipper. "History," he said. That wasn't enough. Kyle crouched, grabbed the zipper, and pulled it open before Franklin could react. The tapes slid forward. Black plastic, labeled in handwritten ink worn by time. One rolled onto the platform. Kyle reached for it. Stepped. There was a soft snap. The tape cracked. The film inside caught beneath the sole of his polished boot. Franklin didn't move. Kyle hesitated. "What is this stuff?" No answer. From across the terminal, a man in a business suit laughed faintly. "He thinks someone still cares." A woman near the coffee stand turned her head, then quickly turned it back. Franklin knelt, slowly, carefully. His knees didn't like it. But he picked up the broken cassette, turned it in his fingers, and placed it gently back in the bag. Kyle shifted, now less confident. "Look, I didn't mean this isn't allowed." Franklin stood again. His breathing was shallow now, but even. "Do your job," he said softly. "I've done mine." He walked 5 steps to the far end of the platform. Sat again. The duffel opened once more, this time in his own hands. He pulled out the field radio, connected the small folding antenna, adjusted the frequency dial, worn down to bare metal. The static buzzed like distant rain. His voice barely rose above it. "This is Wade. Alpha 9. April 14th. Signal check." No response. But across the state, a receiver clicked on. Before Franklin Wade was a ghost on a platform bench, he was a voice in the dark, and 7 men depended on that voice to make it out. They didn't. April 14th, 1969. Somewhere near the Laotian border, the jungle had swallowed the light. His recon team, Alpha 9, had been moving on foot for 2 days. It was supposed to be a routine patrol, chart coordinates, intercept a signal, return. But the signal intercepted them first. They were ambushed before noon. 5 went down in the first 30 seconds. Franklin's job was to stay low, keep the antenna up, and get someone on the line. He did. For 17 minutes, he transmitted coordinates, casualty counts, requests. He recorded part of it. Not on purpose, just habit. He always recorded. Just in case someone higher up ever needed to review. No one ever did. By the time evac arrived, it was too late for 6 of the 8. Franklin and Private Torres survived. Torres died 2 days later at the field hospital. Infection. That left 1. The tape survived. Blood smudged the label. The sound was clean, though. Franklin had listened to it once, 5 years after coming home. He never played it again, but he never got rid of it. That's what the boy stepped on. That's what the city refused to acknowledge. 30 years ago, he'd made a promise. It wasn't even dramatic. Just a muttered oath over a pile of letters, one for each family, written by the men in the unit before they deployed. Franklin had carried them back, sent them all, except one. It had no address, no full name for the wife. Just, to Emily. Tell her I was thinking of her. Franklin kept it, looked for her for years, couldn't find her, so he decided to keep looking in another way. He returned to the last place the whole unit had stood together in the States, a converted freight depot at New Chapel Hill Station. They'd boarded from there, drilled behind it, took photos on the tracks. There was still a chalk mark on the wall inside from a game of hangman someone never finished. In the early years, he tried through official channels. He wrote, called, visited the planning office. Historic registry request, he'd say. Memorial proposal for a decommissioned depot. Each time, the same polite deferral. We appreciate your efforts, sir. We'll forward your request. Then, nothing. So he stopped asking. But he didn't stop coming. Each April 14th, he returned to that station, sat at the same bench, placed the radio on his lap, turned the knob, not to transmit, to remember. He'd built a small ritual. He would sit until sundown, then play the tape aloud, never loudly, just enough for the wind to catch the names. Harris, Torres, Lynn, Reddick, Sawyer, Cho, and Blake. Some years no one noticed. Some years they told him to move. Last year a boy sat next to him, listened for a minute, then offered him a piece of gum. Said nothing. Just nodded and left. That had been enough. This year the tape didn't survive the agent's boot. Franklin sat again, separate from the crowd. He touched the radio like it was fragile, like it might dissolve if handled wrong. His fingers hovered over the dial but didn't turn it. He didn't press play. Not yet. Instead, he pulled out the letter for Emily. Still folded. Still clean. Still waiting. The sun was beginning its descent when Franklin stood again. He moved with care, unfolding the antenna like someone handling a memory. The field radio buzzed as it powered on. Faint static. Nothing more. He adjusted the frequency manually. Each turn of the dial had a name behind it. Not technical settings. Landmarks. Moments. The 3 o'clock position was Sawyer's breath. The 7 o'clock mark was Reddick's last coordinates. It wasn't superstition. It was order and memory. Franklin didn't press record. He didn't press play. He transmitted. This is Wade. April 14th. Alpha 9. Coordinates unchanged. Requesting update on signal status. Over. Only the crackle of the radio answered. He waited. Again. This is Wade. Alpha 9. Still at original point. Weather is clear. Visibility good. Awaiting relay or acknowledgement. Out. The ritual wasn't about expecting a response. It was about making sure the lines stayed open. He reached into the duffel and removed a small, crumpled envelope, different from the others. It bore a return address, faded, written in green ink. He held it up to the light, squinted at it. Then he pulled from his jacket another item, a Polaroid photo of a young man holding a radio with one arm and shielding his eyes with the other. That was Torres. Behind him, barely visible, a chalkboard with the names of the unit. A9 written large. Franklin stared at it for a while. Then he reached into the radio's side panel, unlatched it. Inside was a second cassette, unmarked. It hadn't been played since 1991. He looked up. The platform was quieter now. A woman and child sat further down, sipping sodas. An old man across the tracks smoked and stared into space. No one was paying attention. He inserted the cassette, pressed play. A hum filled the speaker. followed by a voice, young, confident, and tired. "This is Sergeant Lynn of Alpha 9, March 27th. If this gets heard, hey, sorry for the static. We're testing the mic, and Torres keeps knocking into the antenna." Laughter, brief and human. "We're good out here. We know what we signed up for." Just in case someone forgets, the guys here, they're the best I've ever known. The voice faded under jungle noise, then silence. Franklin let the tape run out. Didn't rewind it. He just sat there, eyes closed, lips still. A soft voice broke the silence. "Was that real?" a boy asked. No more than 7, holding a toy train in one hand and a half-eaten cookie in the other. Franklin looked at him, nodded once. "My grandpa was in the war," the boy added. "He doesn't talk much either." Franklin smiled. "Talking isn't always the point." The boy sat beside him for maybe a minute, said nothing else. Then, with the strange wisdom children sometimes carry, he stood, reached into his pocket, and offered Franklin a folded card, one of those "thank you for your service" cards kids hand out on Veterans Day. Franklin took it with both hands, not because he needed it, but because someone needed to give it. After the boy left, Franklin opened the card. Inside, in bright marker, "You're not forgotten, I promise." He folded it carefully, slid it next to the letter for Emily. Then he did what he'd never done before. He pressed the mic again. "Alpha 9, someone heard." By nightfall, the platform had emptied. Only the lights above Track 3 remained on, buzzing softly in the dark. The last commuter train had passed nearly an hour earlier. Even Kyle, the young agent who'd dismissed Franklin that morning, had gone off duty, replaced by 2 older night staff with less enthusiasm for enforcing rules. Franklin remained. He sat beneath the clock, the radio still on his lap, the antenna pointed toward nothing. Then the air shifted. A sound, low, rhythmic, unmistakable, began to pulse through the quiet. Not wind, not a train, rotors. From the northern horizon, a shape cut through the dark sky. Black, sleek, fast, a UH-60 Black Hawk. No one at the station had seen it coming, no alerts, no sirens. The helicopter hovered briefly over the freight yard, then descended with perfect discipline into the decommissioned loading zone behind the station, the same zone where Alpha 9 had once gathered before deployment. As the blade slowed, 6 figures disembarked, 4 in full military uniform, 2 in dark civilian suits. All moved with purpose. At the front of the group walked a tall man in his 70s, straight back, silver hair. A single row of ribbons over his chest, neat as precision. General Alton Reyes. To most, the name meant little. But to Franklin Wade, it was once the voice on the other end of the line, the one who had coordinated the doomed extraction all those years ago. A brother in arms who rose through the ranks, then vanished into the halls of Washington. But some memories never left. The general entered through the freight entrance. Within minutes, the station manager was called in. Local police arrived to secure the area, and at exactly 06:45 the next morning, the mayor of New Chapel Hill was summoned by direct order of the Department of Defense. At 07 sharp, the press was locked out, the doors closed, and the town's leadership gathered in the old freight room. Franklin stood at the center, wearing the same jacket from the day before. His duffel bag rested by his side. General Reyes stepped forward. No introductions, no greetings. He held a folder in one hand. In the other, a laminated photograph, the same one Franklin had carried for decades. The photo of Alpha 9, taken a week before they vanished into the jungle. "Mr. Mayor," the general said, voice firm but calm, "this city has ignored a standing petition for 30 consecutive years. The request was simple, the dedication of a small memorial to 7 men who never came home." He paused. Yesterday, that neglect reached a level that prompted federal intervention. A murmur in the room. "This man," he continued, gesturing to Franklin, "is Staff Sergeant Franklin Wade, the last living member of Alpha 9. He carried out every post-action duty, recovered every body he could, and preserved every voice that was almost lost. His tapes, his letters, his photographs, all submitted annually without fanfare, without press, without complaint." He turned to Kyle, who had been called in and now stood pale, his hands shaking. You denied him access. Destroyed part of the original archive. Called it junk. Kyle opened his mouth, but the general raised a hand. I am not here to shame a boy who didn't know better, Reyes said. I'm here to ensure no one has that excuse again. He handed the mayor a signed executive order bearing the seal of the Department of Defense. The old freight terminal will be designated a federal veterans site. A memorial will be constructed, not in Washington, not in a museum, here, where these men last stood together, where their boots touched American soil for the final time. He stepped back. Franklin said nothing. He didn't need to. The mayor, visibly shaken, nodded without speaking. Kyle, eyes wet, stepped forward. My uncle, he began. Daniel Ashby. He served in the same unit. Always talked about the guy who kept the radios alive. Franklin's face didn't change, but he nodded, just once. Recognition, confirmation, connection. If you believe moments like this still matter, and that quiet dignity deserves to be seen, consider subscribing. We tell stories for people who still care. It took 3 months. 3 months to clear the permits. 3 months to quietly restore the old freight depot. 3 months to prepare a space where memory could breathe. But on July 14th, just as the summer sun began to dip behind the water tower, the gates opened. No speeches, no fanfare, no media vans, just people, locals, veterans, children. A few families who had received those same field letters decades earlier, now framed in their living rooms. They came with flowers, with coins, with photographs. Some didn't bring anything. They just came. The memorial was unlike any other. At the heart of the platform stood a wooden bench carved from the reclaimed freight planks. On its side, a small bronze panel with a red button. Above it, a weatherproof speaker, the kind used in train stations long ago. Every day at 7:32 a.m. and 7:32 p.m., the bench activated, and a voice played, not a narration, not an explanation, just the names, one by one. Harris, Torres, Lynn, Reddick, Sawyer, Cho, Blake. A brief pause. Then, this is Wade, Alpha 9, still here. Franklin never missed a playback. He sat there every evening, same position, same silence. He wore the jacket only on Memorial Days now, not because of the weather, but because of what it carried. On the 4th day after the opening, a young girl approached, maybe 10. Red shirt, messy braid, holding a small radio, a plastic toy, painted green. She sat beside him without asking. When the names finished playing, she turned to him. My teacher said you saved them, she whispered. Franklin's eyes stayed on the horizon. No, he said. I remembered them. The girl held up her toy radio, pressed the button. Nothing played. She frowned. It's not working, she mumbled. Franklin smiled faintly, reached into his duffel, pulled out an identical copy of the real radio. Not operational, just a shell, but the same weight, the same texture. He handed it to her. This one remembers too, he said. She took it with both hands, as if it were heavy. That night, long after the others had gone, Franklin remained. The wind moved gently through the trees. The speaker clicked, and for the first time, the voice playing wasn't alone. Someone had added another recording, a boy's voice, young, shaky, but clear. Thank you, Alpha 9. I hear you. Franklin stood slowly, faced the flag they had installed at the corner of the platform, raised his hand in a slow, deliberate salute. The lights dimmed. The horizon turned gold, and for once the station was quiet not because no one was listening, but because everyone was. If this story moved you, type "still here" in the comments. Your voice matters, and I read every single one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, here's your quiet reminder. Thank you for being here.